Everyone knows that Skaven don't exist. But should you want yourself a puppet of a non-existent rat person, here's how you make one. I'm starting off here by making a plasticine model of the rough shape of the puppet I want to create. This plasticine's quite old, so it takes some time to get it into the shape I want it. Primarily the shape's really just a body and a head at the moment. You can see it coming into shape now. For those not in the know, Skaven are a evil race of subterranean dwelling humanoid rat creatures from the Warhammer Fantasy universe, and probably my favourite fantasy race. I once described them as my spirit animal. Yes, yes. Once I've gotten the clay to be roughly the shape I'm after, I then cover it with some kitchen towel and then tape over it. And then carefully peel off the tape so I can get a form of the shape I'm after. There you go. When you're making a pattern yourself, you need to remove the tape from the model and cut it up in such a way that you can lay the paper down as flat as possible without causing too many creases. Because I'll be working with foam and fur, they will stretch and bend to an extent so you don't have to make it perfect. Here I am copying out the patterns on cardboard and cutting them out. You see, I'll put notes on the form just to indicate which part belongs to where. It's handy at this point to, for example, indicate which part's the head, which part connects to the body, so you can indicate the neck, the front of the face, the top of the mouth, the bottom of the mouth, etc. So when later on you don't have as good an idea of what you're doing, you still have somewhere to work from. Then I take a template for the mouth, both top and bottom jaw. I had a plastic tub that cracked and fell apart. This is what I'm using for the plastic for the mouth. These mouth plates are handy to give you something to effectively hold on to and give the mouth form and shape. I'm first cutting the plastic out with scissors and then sanding it to shape. Next, I'm using my newly created templates to cut out the parts in foam. This is typical upholstery foam. I'm not exactly sure of the official name, but just 1 centimetre thick upholstery foam, just to give it a nice shape. Then you contact glue it together. Remember, with contact glue, you're covering the surfaces to glue, and then you leave it to dry. Give it about 2 to 5 minutes, depending on how hot it is. It's been quite hot of late, so I don't have to wait long, fortunately. Because the foam is so light, you may have to use more force and pressure to get both parts to stick together. Here I am putting glue on the mouth plates, ready to go in the mouth. As you can see here, I'm having to reshape the foam because my templates weren't perfect. For the first time you make templates, this can happen. So don't be afraid when you're making a template to change, tweak and modify as you go. The prototype doesn't always come out perfectly. So here we go, top, bottom jaw, go around the face, yep, and stick the head to the body. And there we go. Somewhat characterless foam base. Here I'm drawing arrows to indicate where the fur wants to flow, because obviously on an animal the fur goes from the nose backwards around the head and then down the body. So I've just got to make sure, not perfectly, to ensure I've got the flow of the fur right, and I'll put that in an arrow on the templates as well for future reference. I haven't used my sewing machine in a while. I have a love-hate relationship with this machine. It's amazing when it works, but when it's not, oh, it's irritating as hell. I think I spent about 10-15 minutes trying to just get it to sew without seizing up. It's something about changing the tautness or something like that, but I do all that and it still doesn't seem to work until magically it does! Yay! And here we go. Once I've gotten it working, it's an easy process just to sew all the bits up. Obviously, if you don't have a sewing machine, it's just as easy to do it by hand. And can be a lot more relaxing because you don't have a sewing machine to deal with. It's all the sewing machine's fault, of course. Not mine, no. When I got given this commission, I loved the idea of being able to make a couple of Skaven puppets. It's a fantastically wonderful idea. I always enjoy the opportunity to make odd and weird things, and like it even more when I get to make Skaven themed odd and weird things. It's a fiddly process and difficult to describe well. here we go. Oh, here we go. Putting the skin on the puppet. Next we have the mouth. It's hot glued into place and then hot glued around the edges. We give him a little tongue. Bit extra here, and that's the mouth done. I sealed the fur around the edges of the mouth just so the edges didn't show and fray. Pull the fur on and then hot glued the fur around the edges of the mouth. It's difficult to get the fur as close to the edge as possible, stuck as close to the edge as possible, without the hot glue obviously showing through. This is my crafting the front two teeth of the rat, but it's difficult to see from this spectacular angle. Now we need to make eyes for our little rat man. I'm going to make the eyes out of resin, so I start by using a kitchen measurer, and I initially thought mould it into the clay and put this cling film over the top to ensure that it has a perfectly slick finish and the resin doesn't stick to the clay. This is my experience. When I've used resin on the oil-based clay, it has a habit of sticking annoyingly to the resin. Yes, there are releasing agents, but I thought, why not use some cling film? Unfortunately, the cling film didn't cling to the clay, so halfway through the casting process, the cling film detached. I've recently gotten myself a new toy, which is a degasser. It creates a vacuum in a small pot, pulling out all of the, in theory, most of the bubbles from resin. It doesn't work completely, but it's nice to get the majority out. Here I am adding translucent colour to the resin. Here I am giving up on the cling film. I wasn't sure what colour we wanted for the eyes, so I decided to make 3 different sets, one black, one red and one green. As every geek knows, Skaven generally have one of those 3 coloured eyes. This is my pressure pot. This is the best way of removing bubbles from resin. It increases the pressure to 30 psi in the pot. Obviously, be careful, make sure it's properly sealed, etc. And what it does, it shrinks any bubbles that there are in the resin so they are hard, if not impossible to see. As you can see, the resin nicely sticks to the clay, but it's easy to take off with a bit of cleaning. Next, I'm just going to do a bit of very, very light sanding and buffing, just to take the odd imperfection out of the cast. Sand with water, it seems to have a better effect, and then I spray it with a clear varnish to give it that smooth, shiny look. Next, I'm just shaping up a nose for my Ratman. Once again, trying different shapes. If it doesn't work, tweaking a little, having another go, tweaking a little. And that's the shape I've gone for, it seems. Add a bit of hot glue just to get it to the shape I want, and then jam it on. There we go. Next, we are painting the air drying clay that I used to make the rat's teeth, and then hot gluing it into place. And here we are with our beautiful shiny eyes. Just adding a little fur onto the top of the eyes and assessing which one we like best. Obviously, black is technically more accurate for rats, red eyes for albino and white rats, and the green is for those Skaven who eat warpstone. Once again, that's more Warhammer stuff. For anyone who doesn't know, think magical rock. Here we go, making the ears. Start off as usual with the template, and in this case we've got fur for the back and pink felt for the front. Sew them together on the edge of the screen. Folding over and attaching. And now we're going for the hands. The final part. Making our template. I'm thinking the hands are going to need some foam stuffing, so basically just doubling it over and sewing it up. At this point my sewing machine's been acting very well. It's playing nice. This obviously means that I've done something wrong. Yes, unfortunately, the first tans I made were just too small, so we're going to have to make something a little bigger. By the look at this, about 2.5 times as big. They don't look right even now, to be honest, but once you get the metal frame inside, it's not that much of an issue. You can position the fingers however you want, so it's not as noticeable. I just needed bigger hands because the fur hid the digits. And back onto the sewing machine. It's useful to leave a gap at the bottom of the palm on the opposite side of the thumb. That's so when it comes time to turn the fur right way round, you have easy access to the fingers and you have space to jam in all the gubbins into the hand. You'll see later. Have I done something wrong? Yes, I think I need to redo it. Yes, I need to redo it. Look at that. And once it's sewed, cut off all the excess between the fingers, and using an old knitting needle, I invert the fur. Here we go, just pushing through the fingers. Once again, that gap in the hand is really helpful to invert the fingers. There we go. Hand number 2. It did occur to me whether I needed to make a specific left and right hand, but really they're exactly the same shape, just the front becomes the back and the back becomes the front. Easy. Lots and lots of tiny little cuts with the scissors to make sure that you cut the fabric and not the fur on top of the fabric, and just push out the fingers. Instead of having one a solid bit of foam going down the arm, I decided instead to put in 2 separate shorter bits of foam, roughly about that length, yep. That way the foam would give it some rigidity and it would naturally give the arm an elbow. It's easy enough to attach the arm, just sew it in the location you think is right. The more difficult part is sewing in the other arm. It's just sort of spending some time making sure you get it in the right place. Now our furry ears, fold in the bottom, and then just fold over the inside flap of the ear, and then like the arm, just sew it into place. Once again, the most difficult part is getting them to look symmetrical. So the problem is they can't be perfectly symmetrical. They have to look symmetrical. So ultimately, because this is stretchy material and foam and that sort of thing, they're never going to be perfect. So if you measure it exactly and put it exactly where the measurement says, it's likely not going to look right because you've messed up a little here, pushed it a bit there. So it's really, you need to go by eye, not by measurement. Here we are, hot gluing the eyes in the right place. Once again, that's difficult to make sure we've got it in the right place. Oh, he's actually starting to look something like, isn't he? Greatest, best, yes, yes. Next, I'm making the rods to control the arms. And Rods need a little bit of wood at the bottom for the puppeteer to hold on to. I'm cutting a bit of wood in two and sanding them into rough dowels. Drilling a hole in the end and super gluing the metal rods into the dowels. Here I am roughly measuring out the fingers and getting some metal wire that's slightly thinner than the clothes hanger wire. Sort of roughly making the hand shape and then twisting them so they hold their form better, and then wrapping the wire around the top of the rods. Next, I'm painting them black just to make them a little less obvious for the finished puppet. There I go, cutting out the foam for the hands for the second time. I then cut the foam for the hands in half and hot gluing them to allow the metal to go inside. What I forgot the first time with this is that if you have some magnets, this would be the point where you hot glue some magnets onto the foam palms, which will allow your puppet to hold things. Well, I remembered I had to do it later. I ended up opening up the hands again and just hot gluing some onto the foam. Obviously pushing the foam and metal frame into the hand. And there we go, a finished Skaven puppet. Yeah, that'll do.
Greatest, best, all for Mimi. No, need more Skaven. Yes, that will do.